And hello, we are back for today's Guerrilla coaching at pokerimania.com. I'm Aarnimetsa and we are taking a look at Neo1186's Knockout 9 Max Sit and Go. So this is going to be the third one of today, and we are going to try to do it in a quick fire way and trying to focus on the more important hands. And go, 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 Guerrilla! Let's try. We are hitting the top pair here. The board is really connected. I think that checking here is okay and trying to get for cheap showdown. And still going for a cheap showdown is pretty optimal. Now any ace gets pretty good value, so just check and trying to get to showdown. I think calling that 20 chip bet is okay. That's just going to be so small of a bet. And nope. King 4, 4 off. We could open from the button in general. But it's not going to be a huge mistake to fold at the early game. It makes adding tables easier, the easier your pre-flop plan is. And we are seeing a lot of folds. This is what 9 max sit and goes usually are at the start. When we are still at the 15-30 level, I think that we can still pretty much open pocket pairs. If we are doing it with 2.5x sizing, we are having pretty good odds to set mine. Yeah, as Kaleon said, that any suited king would be easy to open from button, and offsuit is fine to fold. Yeah. But I'd say still that even king 4 off in general 9 max sit and go metagame, it's going to be a profitable open. This should be an easy call, and it was. Not getting rewarded with good play. Good open from queen 10 suited. And the hands are going through. This is like a machine gun. Or a gorilla on drums. Checking, it's going to be the optimal move, I think. And I don't think that we should be dunking here, so just checking, and we can dunk the turn if opponent just checks behind. I think we can get some of the weaker, some of the hands that are having equity to fold and turn if we are betting, because our opponent should practically never have anything if he checks the flop. And I don't think that we have that much showdown equity against an early position limper, so I think we would want to steal this spot cheaply at some point. If this would have been just limp, this would be an easy complete. And as Kaleon says, that this is a nice looking table with limp, 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 limp. Yeah, that's always nice to see. On those tables, it's just more important to get some good hands when there are opponents that are limping a lot. And in general, I think that the knockout games are going to be... They are going to be pretty good games in general, because I think that they are going to be a lot softer than the non-knockout games. This is those spots that when we are having about 25-50, then it's not going to be good enough to be set mining anymore, and then we can start folding the weakest pocket percent. This is really fine to fold. Sixes is a hand that it's going to feel nasty to fold, but I think it's still the right play. Opponent just limps about 6 big blinds deep. He seems to be probably a recreational player. I'm thinking here about shoving. I think that the opponent that limps here, he might be trapping, but I think like 80% of the time they are having a weak hand and they just want to see a flop with. And we hit pretty good. So I think in this case just calling is going to be the best move. And still, when opponent has limped, I think that we need to call the second barrel as well. And we are against the queen and pretty much 50% from the flop onwards. This should be open. Yeah, we get called. We are hitting a king. C-bet. Yeah, good sizing. We get raised. That sucks. What do we do? I think we should at least call, but it's getting a bit more involved after that. This is like a really nasty spot in a way that you are getting re-raised with such a small sizing. I think I'm going to call in these situations a lot because I see some of the players bluff in these situations. If we are checking the turn and opponent checks behind, then we are pretty sure that our opponent was doing it with a bluff. But I'm thinking that if we are c-betting and our opponent just min raises our c-bet here, I'm thinking it's quite weak to fold. And I agree that it's not a good kicker, but we are also having good hands. We are also having good hands on, or good cards coming from the turn. Like every spade is a good card for us. And there's a call for our mods. I can't be moderating when I'm streaming, so please handle the bat signal. And yeah, as Kaleon says, that some backdoors help. Yeah, I think so too, that the backdoors are going to be helpful. Those are some nasty cards that these are like medium strength hands that you are kind of wanting to open, but they are still too weak. I think that what I have seen in Neo's hand histories in the forums hand analysis section, that perhaps Neo is giving opponents credit for better hands and not thinking that opponents are bluffing as often as the opponents are. So that's something that I have noticed, and I think in here we can see some of that in the King 9 suited hand. I think this is going to be a good place to shove. Even though this guy doesn't look that aggressive, Ace Jack off is just 10 big blinds deep. I think it's going to be too strong. Too strong to fold. Let's mark this as a review hand, that we are going back to it afterwards to see how much our opponent would need to open and call for us to be shoving that hand. And shoving King Queen suited, I think that's the best move. And this is a shove or min raise call. I think shove is probably a bit better, so I think that's pretty well played. And Neo said that Totti looked too tight. It might be that you are having more hands on him in your database. And like now I'm going just for this tournament's hands, so... But let's go through the numbers after the session to see what it really looks like, that how much our opponent needs to be opening for it to make that a good shove for you. I just think that ace jack off is going to be too good of a hand. And Deja said there that on a side note, we are 4 members shy from 1000 followers at YouTube and 4 videos, sort of 500 poker videos on our channel. Those are actually pretty insane numbers. And this should be a shove. Ace-3 off. Without antes, I think that this is probably fine to fold. Next. 3 limps. I think this is going to be a shove, because there will be so much dead money in the pot if you shove here. Going post-flop with it, I don't think that it's going to be... I don't think it's going to be as good as shove it pre-flop, because you are not going to hit the flush draw that often. And Neo's wondering if the TT hand is going to be raise call at some situation. If you are having 3-bet machines behind you, yeah, but I don't think that it's going to be a raise call at other situations, because in this sort of table that you are having players that are liking to limp a lot, you are getting called a lot, and with pocket tens it's about 60% that you are having an overcard on the board against you. And when you are having an overcard on the board against you, you are not going to have fun playing pocket tens about 10 big blinds deep. And this should be a shove. This is a fine fold. This is something that could be a shove, but it's a lot more icky. If it would be suited, it could be a fine complete as well. I think this should be a fold. Like with the pocket tens, if we are going for induce, we would like to see like the perfect guy to induce is a guy that always 3-bets and never flats pre-flop. So that would be a perfect guy to induce with pocket tens. But you are not happy if you are seeing the flop with pocket tens. This should be a fold. This could be a min raise call or a shove. Both are fine. I think actually this should be a call. We have seen this guy shove once before, and I think that his range should be wide enough that this would be a profitable call. And we are behind, but I think that still against his range it's going to be a profitable call. Depending on these 2 players remaining, I think Queen 3 suited could even be a profitable opening here. Yeah, as Calleon said, that the more stack depth we have, the better it's going to be. to induce with pocket tens, because players in general aren't folding that much with 10 big blinds. This is a fine raise, and when you are raising, then a c-bet is in order, and as dry a flop as it is, having a c-bet sizing with less than half a pot is going to be fine and get rewarded for it. That's aggression that we wouldn't have seen from Neo during some of our first sessions, so I think that's improvement. With pocket queens, great min raise and great. I think that's a great place to see bet still. I think it can be a really small c-bet. Just need to have value as well in the ranges. This is one of those spots that we can call pretty widely. We need to only realize about 26% of, or about 30% of equity when we are taking ICM into account. So, but with Jack 5 off, it's going to be a hand that's probably best to be folded, even though you have position. You are behind your opponent's range. And min raising the ace 7 off. And if this is a raise call, then it's going to be great. What? Let's mark this one as well. I think when you are raising ace 7 off, you want to be calling heads up. Heads up against your opponent when you are having about 17 big blinds. And actually this is one example of why you should play knockout sit and goes. I think there has been 0 knockout specific situations in the game, but the opponents have shown to be really bad in a $7 sit and go. So that's a reason to play these knockouts. They are also having less rake in these games, so that's fine as well. King queen raise, if you get shoved, call. That would have been at least a defend. I think that's a min raise call. And why this is important to have as a min raise call, if you have an opponent that's shoving on top of you so often, you don't want to make it easy for your opponent to just, like, you don't want to go that you are having a weak or really weak min raise range. You are basically want to have a, if you are having 17 big blinds, you basically, I think you can like shove the smallest pocket pairs, but I think with about every other hand against general sit and go opponents, it's going to be better to min raise, and with the hand as strong as ace 7, it's going to be fine to min raise call. And Calleon said that would you min raise ace deuce? I would, but it's one of those hands that the weakest aces and the weakest pocket pairs are probably the hands that are gaining the most, or those are the hands that you can shove with the highest stack size. Because those are hands that you are having great pre-flop equity, but post-flop your equity is going to be pretty even, that you are with ace high, you are ahead of most hands in your opponent's range post-flop, but to realize the equity is going to be really hard for you. And in here, when opponent limps, I think shove in here would be in order, even though our stack size is even bigger this time, but when our opponent limps, then he's telling us something. And checking this is not a good option in my opinion, because we are having so much more pre-flop equity than we are having post-flop equity, and I think it's good to check behind if you are having a note on your opponent that he's limp trapping you every time. But if you are thinking that if your opponent is like limping, if his limping range is weak, as most opponents' limping ranges are in heads up, they are weak and they are trappy, and usually opponents are having either or. That if our opponent is having a weak limping range, your ace-3 is having pretty decent equity on this board. So against weak limps, if you are just check and then check folding your ace-3, they're going to make a lot of money limping against you. That's also a limp. And when we go to showdown and we see ace-4 suited, what can we say here? We can say that our opponent's limping range is pretty likely to be pretty weak. When our opponent's limping range is pretty likely to be pretty weak, what should we do then? We should attack his limps and not let him see flops for cheap. This is one of those. I think this is one of those that the hand is probably a bit too weak, but this would be actually a good hand to be betting small in here as a bluff, because I don't think we have that great equity even though we take this hand post flop. So we can turn this hand into a bluff and be really happy about it. And Calleon, we limped in there and checked the river with 2-pair. Wow, I didn't even notice that we are having a 2-pair. 2-pair on the river, so with 2-pair on the river, you just need to bet, and somewhere around 300 chips would be the bet size in here, in my opinion. And somewhere around 300 chips. Get the pot home. Yep. Great. So we did limp on the 8-4 suited hand, so we don't have any idea on our opponent's limping range, other than our opponent limps a lot. This is a decent shove, even though our stack depth is pretty deep. I think the shove is really decent in here because of the hand's postal playability. At least flat call here, please. Flat calling is good. And checking, and our opponent shoves like 4 times over shove to the pot. We would need to have 45% equity, and actually, I think that with any top pair, I would go for it, but bottom pair is going to be too weak. In general, I think our opponent's range will be matched pretty evenly against any top pair, but so there will be hands that are weaker, and there will be some hands that are dirty strong that are doing that. So did our opponent limp? Our opponent did limp. And now we can see that our opponent's limping range is likely to be really weak. And when he limps, make him pay. No, don't make him pay that much. I think like making him pay in here would be to bet to somewhere around 600. We are still having plenty of chips left, and this hand plays pretty well post-flop as well. Of course, shoving in there is plus EV. I just don't think it's going to be the most plus EV way to play it. And that's fine. With bottom pair, we could also think about pot controlling this. I think c-bet still makes money. Money on average. And a lot of defending. I think that's really good. You are not getting your opponent's show chips for cheap. Ace-5 suit, ace-5 off. It's going to be a good shove, even when you are having about 13 big blinds here. You want to shove these hands because of the pre-flop equity. That's way better than the post-flop playability. And Calleon set a strong playable hand, so small raises way for max value. I think you commented on the ace-jack suited, and I agree with that wholeheartedly. We did mark some hands. This time the Guerrilla was quick. So let's go to show marked hands only. I think the best hand to go through would be the first ace-jack suited. That we raise, our opponent shoves. What kind of a range our opponent would need to be shoving that it would be profitable for us to call. And because it's going to be heads up, it doesn't matter the equity calculation. So we can here see that if we are opening 77%, an opponent shoves 49%. So we are using this range, and we are plotting the range against hand equities for ace-7 off. Let's go as well to ace-deuce off and ace-deuce suited. So we are seeing in here that if our opponent 3-bet shoves, the linear range of only 25%. It's going to be good for us to be raise calling with ace-7 off. And why is this important is that 25% it's like a magic range. It's a magic range that pretty much consists of all the pretty hands. Like if we are going here and trying to do a 25% range, it's going to be pretty close to this. So any ace, any pocket pair, anything Broadway, anything nice looking Broadway is going to be 25%, and that's about what I think that opponents are going to. And so Neo, this is going to be one of those hands that was going to be, I think it's going to be important. That if you are raising here and you are against an aggressive looking opponent, and especially when you did this like few hands later and your opponent had 3-bet to you about half of the time you had raised against him. So when the opponent is 3-betting a lot, then ace-7 suited, ace-7 off gets to be a pretty good hand too. And why does it matter? So like if we are going through the ace-7 off in a replayer again, I need to enlarge the replayer. In this situation, when our opponent shoves, we are only needing 44% equity against his range, and when we are heads up, there is no ICM to take care of. So with ace-7 off, we are getting 44%, even though our opponent might be shoving against us with the tightest looking range. And Neo said that would you do this readless too? I think at that point of the heads up, I didn't know how often he 3-bets. I'm thinking that the current or the... I'm thinking like the average opponent. If I'm thinking that this opponent is an average reg, I'm going to go for my average reg reads, and average reg reads say that they are mostly going for 3-bet or fold. 3-bet or fold in the heads-up situation, so the basic reg style is to not go to post-flop very often, play a really easy heads-up strategy, and against that kind of a strategy it's going to be... And if opponent is a random and has played like a random player, then I probably won't be doing this readless, but against the player that looks reggy, I'm going to go for it. If I haven't seen him do anything that stupid at the previous stages of the play or previous stages of the game, I'm going for a call here. And why this is important is that I think that you have shoved this next hand, or next time you get ace-7 off, you have shoved it. But I think that it's going to be better equity to min-raise and call against your opponent that just shoved against you like 3 of the... or actually 1 in 3. So I'm thinking in here that you are losing a bit of value if you are shoving rather than min-raise calling. I wonder, was there any other nice hand? This was the call on the bubble. I think that's nice as well to go through with Hold'em resources. This is actually having some of the knockout mathematics included. Now we need to go for the real price structure because we are not in the heads up anymore. If opponent goes for 59%, then it's going to be really profitable. And the break-even-ish point is going to be at around 30%, I think. 35%. Pretty close. So I think in this situation, and it's going to be closer to 30% because you can get the bounty from this hand. So the bounty mathematics will make this a better call than it would be in a general sit and go. Oh, there was the ace-jack hand that we needed to go through. Let's go through that as well. I just think that those heads-up hands are really important on how to get more value in heads-up. And this is an advanced hand. And we want to get our opponents... No, back. The Hercules to... We are interested what happens after Hercules. Hercules min raises. So Hercules, the range for him to min raise, pretty interesting. So then the range for you to shove would be ace-jack off. I think that's going to be a wider range than in general. If we are just looking at his opening range, like how much our opponent, if he calls correctly, how much he would need to be opening that. With ace-jack off, it's going to be a good... It's actually smack in the middle of 15%. So that gets to be a... I think that gets to be a judgment call. If our opponent needs to open for 15% in this spot, for this to be good, then I'm thinking that this is really a judgment call, because I would think that an average opponent in this sort of situation would be going with about the 15% range, and the more aggressive opponents are going with more, and the less aggressive opponents are going to make this a losing play. So I actually think that the fold here is fine, especially if you're thinking your opponent is tight. It just looked better than it is. And our chat has been really quiet for a while. It's all about the analytics. When we are taking the Hold'em Resources calculator up, everybody just runs away from the stream that, no, I might be learning something. But I think that this was an interesting night, and it was interesting to look through some of the member hand histories for today rather than playing myself. And I hope that you had an interesting evening with the hand histories, and I think it really got in a nice groove when we did this Guerrilla style, so that we are doing hands in a quickfire way. So I think it might be even more interesting than live play, because we had really a lot of hands that we did go through. And please, if you want to leave the feedback, please leave it to the feedback thread in the forums, because in the chat everything just gets lost after some time has passed. So if you like this format, leave feedback there. Perhaps we'll do it again. And if we are doing it again, we are probably going to do it the same way, that it's not going to be that select your hand histories in advance, but we might do some of these fun hand history reviews, and I'll guarantee that the guys that are using our site and are making content or playing on our sites will get some advantages in these draws. And thanks for everybody that was watching. I hope you are having a good night if you are going to sleep. And if you are going to play poker, I hope you win a crap ton of monies. Bye!